On our anniversary, my wife revealed she was pregnant by my brother. I had planned the perfect anniversary night. Candles, dinner at her favorite restaurant, a quiet stroll along the waterfront, everything set up to lead to the moment I'd been waiting for. I could barely contain my excitement as I reached into my jacket pocket, feeling the small velvet box I had carried with me for weeks. Tonight was going to be the night I asked Emma to marry me. 5 years together, and I was finally ready to take that next step. Emma seemed distracted throughout dinner, but I chalked it up to her work stress. She'd been working long hours lately, so I didn't press it, figuring the night would take a turn once we got to the more intimate part of the evening. I held her hand as we walked by the water, the city lights reflecting off the river, casting a soft glow around us. This was it, the perfect moment. "Emma," I started, pulling her to a stop by the railing. My heart raced as I reached for the ring, ready to drop to one knee. But before I could, she pulled her hand away, her expression turning serious. "Jason, wait," she said softly, her voice shaky. "We need to talk." I froze, still holding the box, my mind racing through 1,000 possibilities. But nothing could have prepared me for what she said next. "I can't marry you." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I stared at her, the ring now feeling like a weight in my hand. "What? Why?" "Emma," I thought. She bit her lip, her eyes welling up with tears. "I'm so sorry, Jason. I've been lying to you. There's something I haven't told you." A cold knot formed in my stomach as she continued. "I've been seeing someone else." I couldn't process it at first. The words didn't make sense. Seeing someone else? This wasn't happening. Not tonight. Not on the night I was about to propose. "Who?" I managed to choke out, my throat tight with disbelief. Emma looked down, tears spilling over. It's a guy from work. It's been going on for months. I didn't mean for it to happen, but I can't lie to you anymore. I can't marry you, Jason." The world seemed to tilt as her words sank in. Months? She had been cheating on me for months? All while we were planning our future together? My mind couldn't catch up with the whirlwind of emotions, shock, anger, heartbreak. "You've been cheating on me?" My voice cracked, a mix of disbelief and pain. Emma nodded, her face crumpling. "I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you." The ring box fell from my hand, landing softly on the pavement. It felt like everything we had, everything I had dreamed of, was crumbling right in front of me. The woman I loved, the life I thought we were building, it was all a lie. I turned away, unable to look at her. My mind was racing, my heart pounding in my chest. This wasn't how tonight was supposed to go. This wasn't the life I thought I was living. "I don't even know who you are anymore," I whispered, my voice barely audible over the sound of the water. I didn't know how I made it home that night. My body moved on autopilot, my mind still spinning from Emma's confession. The night had been a blur. One moment I was ready to propose, the next, my entire world had fallen apart. The ring box sat on the passenger seat of my car, taunting me with what could have been. When I walked into the apartment, everything felt too familiar, too normal. Our photos were still on the walls, her shoes by the door, her jacket hanging on the back of the chair. It was as if nothing had changed. But everything had. I sat down on the couch, my hands shaking as I tried to make sense of what had just happened. Months. She had been cheating on me for months. While I was planning a future, she was planning her way out. How did I not see it? Was I that blind, that naive? My phone buzzed, pulling me out of my thoughts. It was a message from Emma. "I'm so sorry, Jason. Please don't hate me. I never meant for it to happen this way." I stared at the message, feeling a surge of anger rise in my chest. Sorry? That's all she had to say? Sorry for what? For cheating? For lying? For ruining everything we had built together? I tossed the phone aside, not bothering to respond. There were no words that could fix this. No apology that would make up for the months of betrayal. I needed space. I needed time to think. The next few days were a haze. I avoided my friends, my family, anyone who would ask questions I wasn't ready to answer. I buried myself in work, hoping to drown out the pain. But it was always there, lingering in the background, gnawing at me. My coworkers noticed the change, but I brushed off their concerns with a fake smile and mumbled excuses about relationship stuff. I wasn't ready to talk about it. I wasn't ready to admit that the woman I loved had been unfaithful. That I had been a fool. One night, about a week after Emma's confession, I found myself sitting in our apartment, staring at the photos on the wall. Each picture was a reminder of the life we had shared, the memories we had made. But now, they felt tainted. Every smile, every laugh, every embrace, it was all a lie. I grabbed a box from the closet and started taking down the pictures, one by one. I couldn't look at them anymore. I couldn't live in this space that we had once called home. It felt like a prison, a constant reminder of her betrayal. As I packed away the last of the photos, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a message from Emma, it was from Matt, my best friend since college. "Hey man, haven't heard from you in a while. Let's grab a drink." I hesitated for a moment before responding. Maybe it was time to stop hiding. Maybe it was time to face the world again. I couldn't stay in this apartment forever, wallowing in my own misery. "Yeah, sounds good. I'll meet you at the usual spot." When I arrived at the bar, Matt was already there, a beer in hand and a concerned look on his face. He didn't need to ask me what was wrong, he could see it. I sat down across from him, and for the first time in days, I let myself breathe. "What's going on, Jason?" he asked, his voice soft but firm. I stared at the drink in front of me, my mind racing. I didn't know how to start, how to explain everything that had happened. But the words came out anyway. "Emma, she cheated on me." Matt's eyes widened in shock. "What? No way. Emma? Are you serious?" I nodded, feeling the weight of the confession lift slightly off my shoulders. "Yeah. She told me last week. She's been seeing some guy from work for months." Matt shook his head in disbelief. "Jesus, man. I'm so sorry. I don't even know what to say." We sat in silence for a few moments, the noise of the bar fading into the background. It felt good to finally say it out loud, to let someone else in on the pain I had been carrying alone. "What are you going to do?" Matt asked, breaking the silence. I shrugged, running a hand through my hair. "I don't know. I can't stay with her. I thought I could forgive her, but I just can't. Every time I look at her, all I see is the betrayal." Matt nodded, taking a sip of his drink. "You don't deserve that, man. No one does." The rest of the night passed in a blur of conversation and drinks, but for the first time since Emma's confession, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I could get through this. I wasn't alone. And as painful as it was, I knew what I had to do. The next morning, I woke up with a clearer head. I couldn't avoid the inevitable any longer. It was time to talk to Emma. To make a decision about our future, or lack of one. It took me another week to build up the courage to confront Emma. I avoided the apartment whenever she was home, finding excuses to stay late at work or crashing at Matt's place. The thought of facing her felt like ripping open a wound that hadn't even begun to heal. But I couldn't avoid her forever. I had to know why. I needed answers, closure, something to make sense of this chaos. So, I texted her one night, asking if we could talk. She responded almost immediately, saying she'd be home in an hour and wanted to talk too. The walk back to our apartment felt like a death march. My heart was pounding in my chest, my mind running through 1,000 scenarios of how the conversation would go. Would she apologize again? Would she try to explain away her actions, expecting forgiveness I wasn't sure I could give? When I walked through the door, Emma was sitting on the couch, her face pale and drawn. She looked like she hadn't slept in days, and guilt was etched into every line of her face. The moment our eyes met, she stood up, her hands nervously wringing together. "Jason, she started, but I cut her off. "No. I need to talk first," I said, my voice firmer than I felt. "I've spent the past week trying to figure out what went wrong. How we ended up here. I need to know, why? Why did you do this? Why lie to me for months?" Emma's eyes filled with tears, and she sat back down, covering her face with her hands. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I swear I didn't. It just got out of control." "Got out of control?" I repeated, disbelief dripping from my words. "Emma, you cheated on me for months. You lied to me every day, and you were planning to marry me. How does that just happen?" She sobbed, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. I don't know, Jason. I was lonely, okay? You were always working late, always stressed out, and I felt like you didn't care anymore." Her words hit me hard, like a slap across the face. Yes, I had been working long hours. Yes, I had been stressed. But it was all for us. For our future. And now she was trying to justify her betrayal by blaming me? "You felt like I didn't care?" I asked, incredulous. "Emma, I was working for us. I was planning our future. Hell, I was about to propose to you the night you told me about the affair. How could you think I didn't care?" She shook her head, her sobs intensifying. "I don't know, Jason. I was just so confused. I didn't mean to hurt you." I sat down across from her, trying to keep my emotions in check. "You didn't mean to hurt me? Emma, you destroyed me. Do you have any idea how much pain you've caused?" "I'm sorry," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry." I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Part of me wanted to forgive her, to find some way to fix the shattered pieces of our relationship. But the other part of me, the part that had been betrayed, knew that I could never trust her again. How could I? "There's no fixing this, is there?" I asked quietly, more to myself than to her. Emma didn't answer right away. After a long silence, she shook her head. I don't think so. I wish there was, but I don't think there's any way back from this. Her words hung in the air, heavy and final. It was over. 5 years together, and it all came crashing down in a single night. I stood up, pacing the room, my hands running through my hair. I didn't want to be here anymore. I didn't want to feel this pain anymore. But there was still one thing I needed to know. Who is he? I asked, my voice low. Emma froze, her face paling. What? Who is the guy you've been seeing? I repeated, my anger rising again. I deserve to know. She hesitated for a moment, then lowered her gaze. His name is Mark. He works in my department. Mark, I repeated, the name like venom on my tongue. And how long has this been going on? About 6 months, she admitted, barely above a whisper. 6 months. Half a year of lies. I clenched my fists, trying to hold back the rage bubbling up inside me. I wanted to scream, to break something, but I didn't. Instead, I took a deep breath and let the silence hang between us. I'm leaving, I finally said, my voice cold and distant. I can't do this anymore. Emma's eyes widened. Jason, please. Don't leave like this. We can talk, we can. No, I interrupted, my tone final. There's nothing left to talk about. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. Without another word, I turned and walked out the door, leaving the apartment, and the life we had built together, behind. Leaving that apartment was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but it was also one of the most necessary. The moment the door clicked shut behind me, it felt like a massive weight had been lifted off my chest, yet at the same time, my heart was heavier than ever. I drove aimlessly for hours that night, my mind buzzing with a million thoughts but stuck on one painful reality: I no longer had a future with Emma. I didn't go to Matt's place this time. I couldn't bear to face more questions, more pity. Instead, I checked into a motel on the other side of town. It was the kind of place that no one asks questions, and that's exactly what I needed. The room was small, the bed uncomfortable, and the walls paper-thin, but it didn't matter. I just needed space. Space to think, space to process. The first few nights were the hardest. Sleep came in fits, and when it did, it brought nightmares, images of Emma with Mark, laughing behind my back, living out their twisted affair while I sat in the dark, clueless. I woke up drenched in sweat, anger and sadness clawing at my chest. I couldn't escape the hurt, no matter how far I ran. I tried to distract myself with work, throwing myself into every task I could find, taking on extra shifts, and volunteering for late nights at the office. My coworkers didn't ask many questions, and I didn't offer any answers. Everyone knew something was wrong, but I wasn't ready to talk. Not to them. Not to anyone. A couple of weeks passed like this, numb, robotic, moving through the motions of life without really feeling anything. But one day, as I was cleaning up some files at work, my phone buzzed. It was an email, and the subject line immediately sent a chill down my spine: Mark and Emma's engagement party. I stared at the screen, disbelief washing over me. Engagement? Already? It had barely been a month since I walked out of that apartment, and now they were getting engaged? I opened the email, my hands trembling with a mix of rage and disbelief. Hi Jason. I just wanted to give you a heads up in case you hear about it elsewhere. Mark proposed last night, and I said yes. I know this might be difficult to hear, but I thought it would be better if you found out from me rather than through the grapevine. I really hope one day we can talk and maybe find some closure for everything that happened. I'll always care about you, and I wish you nothing but the best. Emma. I nearly threw my phone across the room. The audacity, the complete lack of awareness, how could she think this was something I wanted to hear from her? How could she think this was better than finding out some other way? The anger surged through me like a wildfire, burning away any lingering sadness. I typed a reply, my fingers flying across the screen. Emma, I don't need or want closure from you. You made your choices, and I made mine. There's nothing left to say between us. Good luck with Mark. You're going to need it. I hit send before I could second-guess myself, and the moment I did, I felt lighter. It wasn't much, but it was something. A step toward moving on, however small. But it wasn't just anger that was bubbling beneath the surface. As much as I hated to admit it, part of me still felt hollow. Part of me still missed her, the woman I thought she was. I wasn't ready to admit that to anyone else, though. Not yet. So, I kept it to myself, pretending that the anger was enough to push me through. A few days later, I was out grabbing a drink with Matt, who had been my rock through all of this. He didn't pry, didn't push me to talk, but I knew he was always there when I needed him. Have you heard anything from Emma? He asked cautiously, after our third round of beers. Yeah, I muttered, staring at the condensation on my glass. She emailed me. Said she's engaged to Mark. Matt's eyes widened. Are you kidding me? Already? Yeah. Already, I said, the bitterness creeping into my voice. She wanted to give me a heads up. Like I'd care. Matt shook his head in disbelief. Jesus. I don't even know what to say, man. That's insane. Yeah, well, that's Emma, I guess, I said, draining the rest of my beer. Always moving on to the next thing. Matt leaned back, crossing his arms. You doing okay with all this? I shrugged, not really knowing how to answer. I don't know, man. Some days, I'm fine. Other days, it feels like the rug's been pulled out from under me all over again. You know you deserve better than her, right? Matt said, his tone serious. I mean it, Jason. She didn't respect you, didn't appreciate what she had. You're better off without her. I nodded, though deep down, I wasn't sure I fully believed him yet. But I wanted to. I wanted to believe that there was more out there for me, that I wouldn't be stuck in this pit of betrayal and heartbreak forever. As the night wore on, Matt suggested we take a weekend trip, get out of town, clear my head. At first, I was hesitant. I wasn't sure if running away would solve anything, but the more I thought about it, the more appealing the idea became. A fresh start. A break from everything that reminded me of Emma and Mark. All right, I finally agreed. Let's do it. And for the first time in a long while, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I could start moving on. The trip Matt and I took turned out to be exactly what I needed. We drove up to the mountains, rented a cabin, and spent the weekend hiking, fishing, and sitting by the fire with beers in hand, talking about everything except Emma and Mark. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again, like the weight of the past was starting to lift, even if just a little. The fresh air, the physical exhaustion from the hikes, and the distraction of the stunning views helped clear my mind. I found myself thinking less and less about the betrayal that had defined my life for so long. Every time the anger started to creep back in, I focused on the peace around me, the rustling of the trees, the call of birds in the distance, the crackle of the fire at night. It wasn't a cure, but it was a start. On the last night of the trip, Matt and I were sitting by the fire, the sky a deep, star-filled canvas above us. We hadn't said much for the past hour, just enjoying the quiet, when Matt finally spoke up. You know, you're going to be okay, Jason, he said, his eyes fixed on the flames. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but this isn't the end for you. I stared into the fire, the flickering flames casting long shadows around us. I know, I said, though I wasn't entirely sure if I believed it yet. But I wanted to. I wanted to believe that this wasn't the end of my story. Seriously, man, Matt continued. What Emma and Mark did. That's on them. Not you. You didn't deserve any of this, and you don't owe them anything. You've got a chance to start fresh now. Do something just for you. His words hit me harder than I expected. I had been so caught up in the anger and the hurt that I hadn't even considered what a fresh start might look like. For months, my life had been defined by Emma and the betrayal. But Matt was right, I had a choice now. I could keep dwelling on the past, or I could start building a new future, one that had nothing to do with her. The next day, as we packed up to head home, I felt lighter. It wasn't that the pain was gone, but it was more manageable. For the first time, I was beginning to accept that maybe, just maybe, this whole mess was a blessing in disguise. Maybe losing Emma wasn't the end of my life, but the beginning of something better. When I got back home, I knew I couldn't go back to the way things were. The apartment I shared with Emma was filled with too many memories, too much baggage. So, I made a decision, I was moving out. I found a small one-bedroom place across town and started packing up my things. It felt good, cleansing, almost, to leave behind the remnants of our life together. I left Emma a note saying I'd be by to pick up my stuff, nothing more. I didn't owe her a conversation, not anymore. A few days later, I was standing in the apartment I would soon call my own. It wasn't much, but it was mine. No ghosts from the past, no memories tied to betrayal. Just a blank slate, waiting for me to build something new. As I unpacked my boxes, I stumbled across the ring I had planned to give Emma on the night she told me about the affair. The sight of it brought back a flood of emotions, sadness, anger, even a little regret. But this time, instead of letting it overwhelm me, I took a deep breath, grabbed the ring, and drove straight to the pawnshop down the street. I didn't need it anymore. I didn't need the reminder of what could have been. When the pawnbroker handed me the cash, it felt like I was closing a chapter. Emma and Mark? They were my past now. And while the scars of their betrayal would take time to heal, I knew I was finally ready to start moving forward. A few weeks later, Matt set me up on a date with someone he knew from work. At first, I was hesitant, unsure if I was ready to open myself up again. But I went, figuring it was time to try. Her name was Sarah, and from the moment we started talking, I could tell she was different. No games, no lies, just honesty, laughter, and a sense of peace I hadn't felt in a long time. We took things slow, but for the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't afraid of the future. I wasn't afraid of being hurt again. I knew that whatever happened next, I was stronger than I had been before. Emma's betrayal had shattered me, but I had picked up the pieces, one by one. And while I wasn't whole yet, I was getting there. As Sarah and I walked along the river after dinner one night, the cool breeze sweeping through the trees, I realized something. I wasn't thinking about Emma anymore. For the first time, she wasn't occupying space in my mind. I had moved on.